there are many things in Crimson Desert that don't make any sense. And before I expose a few of them, I am going to tell you that last year, when I was watching all the reveal trailers, all of these videos that showcased Crimson Desert, I was probably the only person that was saying that there was something wrong with Crimson Desert. It looked to me like a game that was trying to put a lot of systems in its game and try to copy many formulas of other games, but in my opinion, when I watched those videos where they showcased the game, to me it looked like a game that lacked soul. To me it looked like a game that was trying to be the other games that it was copying, but it didn't really have its own identity. So I thought, and back then I called the game slop, and this day I don't think the game is slop, but I still think that the game lacks focus, that the game has many systems that don't make much sense or that they are badly implemented. And this is the video where I am going to show or mention a few of those systems or a few of those mechanics that don't make a lot of sense or are very convoluted or just are there just to be there. And this is not a complete list because I'm pretty sure a lot of issues were already changed or fixed with patches, or maybe I am not aware or many other situations where there are systems that don't make any sense. If you know more of these examples or if you have more of these examples, please post them in the comments section. So let's start with the fact that you can catch animals and you can hold them in your hand, but you cannot capture them. In fact, you can't even kill them right there. So you can just hold them for no reason. There is no point. You can mount exotic mounts like bears, lizards, chocobos, things like that. Many of them even come with a saddle, but you cannot keep them. You cannot keep them for yourself. So these are just temporary mounts, kind of like what Tears of the Kingdom did, but instead of fixing the issue that many had in Tears of the Kingdom that they couldn't keep these mounts, they chose to just copy paste the same mechanic with the same flaws for no fucking reason. You have multiple characters just for the sake of having multiple characters. The animation when you switch these characters is very similar to the animation you see when you switch characters in Grand Theft Auto 5. So it seems to me that they just wanted to have multiple characters to have the same animation and to copy more or less the feeling of Grand Theft Auto 5 just because they wanted to have it. Because if you try to use these characters, Onka and the bitch, I don't know her name, that's how important it's to me. Onka, you can only use him at the very late game. The bitch, you can use her very early into the game, but the problem is that the developers will arbitrarily remove your ability to use them throughout the story, and they will also force you to use them in certain sections of the game. There is also the fact that you cannot use these guys to solve puzzles. The last patch supposedly makes them able to solve these puzzles, but only the ones in the land, because you can't go to the abyss with them. They are unable to travel to the abyss and solve the puzzles of the abyss for some fucking reason. They barely have any gear. For example, I was looking for a cloak for Onka that had ice resistance. I couldn't find any. So what's the point? So it just feels like they are there just for the sake of being there, because these multiple characters feel like one of those mechanics that are just there because the developers wanted to have multiple characters, but they are not even very well integrated into the main game. Crimson Desert would have been a much better game if the developers would have focused only on a single character, on Cliff. All the abilities, all the skill trees, all the different movements of these additional characters should have been abilities of Cliff. By making these additional characters, they subtracted value from the game. And the problem is if you actually play one of those characters, because for the looks of it, it seems that they are going to add another two characters. This is dumb. This is stupid. You're spreading your game too thin. You shouldn't do this. Anyone that plays with these characters is going to feel gimped, because for starters, they have less gear options. Why should anyone bother using these characters? I like Onka. I really like this guy because I like orcs, Sok and everything. So I really enjoy orcs, but I do believe that it's a shame that these characters were implemented in this way, or that they even exist at all, because, like I said, I think the developers are spreading the game too thin with this. There are unique weapons that you can have with cool effects, but they come with no Abyss core slots for some reason. You cannot put this Abyss gear in them, so what's even the point? You also have unarmed combat, and unarmed combat, just like these multiple characters, feels like it's just there for being there, because if you actually try, like me, to make a build around unarmed combat, you will see that you have no actual weapon to use. There is no cestus like in Nioh 3, there is no fist weapons, you can't equip certain Abyss gear on the gauntlets, you can't use those cool abilities that trigger after you use certain attacks, you cannot equip those Abyss gears in your gauntlets. For some reason they decided that it was a great idea to separate the punches from the kicks, and so to even nerf unarmed combat even further. So whatever you equip in your gauntlets, it's only going to work for your punches, and whatever you equip in your boots, it's only going to work for your kicks. It doesn't make fucking sense, but it's like that because just because that's the point, and many things in this game are just there for the sake of being there. And in my opinion, you should be able to equip Abyss gears like the brown gauntlets that you have to equip to actually use unarmed combat. Those gauntlets should have slots to equip this Abyss gear that you can only equip on weapons. You should be able to put them on those brown gauntlets that in my opinion should have like 4 to 5 Abyss gear slots in them. You can have a farm, you can cultivate plants, but you have to plant seeds one by one. So you have to go through your inventory, you have to select your seed and then plant them one by one. Why? I don't fucking know why. But that's the point of this video. There is no sense. Many of the things in this game make no fucking sense. You have this huge open world map, but the problem is that it's gate kept by story missions. So if you try to go, for example, to Demenis or whatever the fuck is called, you are going to notice that most people in those zones are hostile to you. So you are effectively unable to explore those zones until you beat certain main missions. So what's even the point of having this freedom if you are not going to really be able to enjoy it? Onka, the orc, that guy by default doesn't have a mechanism to glide like Cliff and the other bitch. So you actually have to go and craft a jetpack for Onka to be able to glide with him. Why? I don't fucking know why, but that's the point. You can have a barber and a person that will dye your clothes at your Grey main camp, but here is the kicker. You can only have it after you have done a shit ton of fucking side missions for the Grey mains. So I am not kidding, I only unlocked this barber and this guy that dyes clothes at like 120 hours into the game. So that makes no sense. Why the fuck you are going to delay the player to have the access of the barber? I don't understand. And the problem is that you don't have any more barbers in any of the series, and that makes no fucking sense. I get that the guy that dyes the clothes in the Grey main camp, he has all the colors that you have unlocked, and that's a good thing, but at the very least up until that point you have access to guys that dye clothes in separate towns or cities, so you are not completely unable to use the mechanic. Unlike the barber, the pets that you can adopt, you can't give them names for some reason. So you can adopt them, but you can't name them. Now, I have complained about the combat and the bosses on other videos, but I am going to mention that the fact that the soft lock exists in itself is a fucking stupidity. This is one of those things that don't make any sense. Having soft lock on in a game that throws tons of enemies at you, like dozens of enemies at you, doesn't make any sense, and it feels like they just implemented the soft lock on for the sake of having a soft lock on, because it doesn't make any sense. You have also magic or elemental attacks that are very fucking useless. To be fair, the fire elemental attack it's kind of good, but the lightning and the frost attack doesn't make any sense. They are just garbage, and I am not talking about imbue element. I am talking about the basic elemental attacks, like your basic magics. So the fire one is decent, the lightning one is garbage, and the frost one is trash. So I don't even know, there is a wind one that I haven't unlocked that instead of doing damage is like a smoke bomb. It's just fucking garbage. I don't understand why have this magic in the game if it's going to be trash. So once again, having things for the sake of having them. So you have this mechanic of capturing territories, and the enemies sometimes can capture other territories that you haven't captured. But the problem is that if you liberate a zone, then what's going to happen is that the enemies are never going to reclaim that zone back. So it's not dynamic, and you can actually finish the entire map, and you will never face any type of effort from the enemy to recapture the territories that you have captured or liberated. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like a good mechanic, but it's poorly implemented and doesn't make sense. So you get a dragon, and I haven't got to that part yet, but I know that you have access to a dragon mount at some point, and the problem with this dragon is that you can only use the dragon for like 15 minutes, and then you have to sit through a cooldown of 50 minutes. So what's the point? Why have it in the first place? This is a single player game. Why are you limiting the player their ability to use a mount? Doesn't make fucking sense. No, it's because it's too overpowered. Well, maybe nerf it a bit, but remove fucking cooldowns. This is not an MMO. What the fuck are you talking about? You also have these items, these cuckoo items, this cuckoo pot where you can snatch these pieces that you can use to solve puzzles with them, and I haven't even used that mechanic at all. I don't understand what is the purpose of the cuckoo pot or the cuckoo items. I don't understand why they are even in the game. I haven't even used any of that at all. Most of the puzzles, in fact all of the puzzles that you solve in the game, they aren't even missing pieces or something that you have to pull out of this pot. Not at all. So why do you even have that mechanic in the game? It doesn't make sense. So Abyss cores, Abyss gears. There is levels for these Abyss gears, and these levels go from 1 to 4. So you have level 1, level 2, level 3 and level 4. So up until level 3 the Abyss gears are cool and there is nothing wrong with them, but when you craft a level 4 Abyss gear, suddenly they have durability. Why? I don't fucking know why. That's the fucking point. It's stupid. It doesn't make any fucking sense. The game doesn't have ambient occlusion. If you haven't noticed, this is why your game, when there is no direct lighting hitting the surface of the terrain, your game is going to look really bad. Whenever there is no lighting, no sunlight or moonlight or any kind of light, your game looks like garbage. You know why? It's because of that. They didn't implement ambient occlusion in their game for some reason, and I know what's the reason for that. It's because for some reason they rely on ray reconstruction for the ambient occlusion. So if you're on consoles, well, too bad for you. And if you are on a mid or a low end PC, well, too bad for you, because your game is going to look like garbage. The only way to make the game look good is with ray reconstruction on. Other than that, your game is going to look really bad whenever there is no light, whenever there is no sunlight, moonlight or any kind of light that hits the surface of the terrain that you're in. There is also this puzzle that I found yesterday where you had to move these blocks. To describe you this puzzle in a better way, I'm going to start from the beginning. So I reached this location where there was a pool of water that was frozen. So my intuition and my experience with the game told me that something could be done with that frozen water. So I used my fire spell to melt the ice, and the water was drained from this pool, and this revealed some cubes, some giant cubes that had some images on top of them. So it was pretty clear to me that you had to arrange these figures in a way to form a shape, make them match to show an image, and that was very easy to figure out. The problem was that when I tried to arrange these figures, the issue I had is that it was very easy to figure out that Cliff had to push these blocks, but then the problem was when I remembered that Cliff has no way to pull blocks. He doesn't have a way to pull blocks to move them backwards towards him. So I was very confused on how to do this. because I said, I know that you can push the blocks, but how the fuck are you going to pull them? Because it's needed. To solve the puzzle, you actually need to pull the blocks towards you many times. So I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and I couldn't figure out. So I had to search in YouTube, to search on the internet to see what the fuck I was doing wrong. This is the second time that I had to do this. The first time was in another puzzle that was a piece of shit, and I even made a video about that shit puzzle. And now again, same thing happened to me, but for another reason. So what do you know? It turns out that Cliff can actually stab these blocks with his sword, and then doing that helps him to pull the blocks or move them to the left or to the right. How the fuck I was supposed to figure that out on my own? How the fuck? Just tell me how. Because there is no indication whatsoever that you can do that. Because there are other puzzles where you actually have to stab certain figures, certain statues, but you see that that piece has a hole in which you can clearly need to stab it. But on these blocks, there wasn't any fucking hole. There wasn't anything. Now, to give you another example of a game that does the same, Legacy of Kain Soul River on the PS1. Rachel needs to grab these big blocks just like Cliff, but he stabs these blocks with his claws, and he then proceeds to move these blocks with his claws. But how I was supposed to know this, that Cliff could actually stab these stone blocks, because they are made of stone, with his fucking sword? It doesn't make sense. This is the problem with this game. Many things don't make any sense. This is why I agree with Asmongold in this regard. Many things in this game have no logic, or the logic is all over the fucking place. Because, as I said from the beginning when I was explaining you how I started to solve this puzzle, I reached the conclusion that I had to melt the ice in this pool of water to reveal the puzzle. And logically, I used my fire spell. That makes sense. That makes you feel rewarded because you are solving the problem using the logic that you have been using throughout the entire game. And it is even more rewarding when you have to figure this out on your own using real life logic and you see that it actually works in game. When you see a frozen pool of water and you can actually melt this water and reveal something to you, that's rewarding. But then all of that is thrown down the drain when the puzzle that it's revealed requires you to stab these stone blocks, and doesn't make any fucking sense that you are going to ever think that you need to do that, because the blocks are made of solid stone. It doesn't make sense that you can actually stab them with your fucking sword. It doesn't make sense. Now, for the most part, I really like the puzzles in Crimson Desert. It's probably my favorite part of the game. I really enjoy the Abyss. And it's on the minority side of things when these things happen. But when they do happen, it feels like shit. This single puzzle is making me feel bad. It's making me feel like the game is not well thought. It doesn't make sense. So these kind of illogical things that happen in the game, they need to be ironed out because they are hurting the experience of the player. Now, there are talks, there are rumors about Pearl Abyss trying to implement multiplayer into Crimson Desert. That's another thing that makes no fucking sense to me. And the reason why they are going to try to go that route, if these rumors are truth, the reason why they are going to do that is because they are trying to copy Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption. In short, they are trying to copy Rockstar. This is stupid. You have seen this thing in the past. We have seen the effects of focusing on multiplayer. GTA and Red Dead Redemption 2, the quality of the single player of those games suffered, in fact, because of Rockstar deciding to implement an online mode to milk the players. This is stupid. People that defend games having multiplayer when it doesn't make any sense to have multiplayer hurt the single player experience. Another example is Xenoblade Chronicles X, another game that was hurt by the stupid forced multiplayer back in the day when developers for some reason trying to force multiplayer into everything, probably because they wanted you to pay the online subscription of PlayStation, of Microsoft, and Nintendo. It doesn't make sense that Crimson Desert is going to focus or is going to pull resources and time from the single player to focus in a multiplayer online mode. It doesn't make sense. Allegedly, Crimson Desert started as an MMO and then was turned into a single player game. Why the fuck are you going to do at 360 degrees right now? Why are you going back to trying to be an MMO if you come from that and you realized that the game wasn't going to work as an online game? Why are you going to do that? It doesn't make sense. They should focus in the single player. This game has a ton of potential, and if they try to implement online mode and multiplayer mode, it's going to hurt the game. It's going to hurt what can possibly be in the future a really good single player game. Right now it's a decent single player game. It has a ton of issues, a ton. But trying to do this, trying to implement online doesn't make any fucking sense. So there goes that into the list of things in this game that make no fucking sense. So more or less, these are the things that I have found that don't make sense in the game, in Crimson Desert. Now, I don't hate the game, and the reason why I am making this video is in the hopes for the developers to see this and maybe improve many of these situations and make them better. I truly want Crimson Desert to be a good game and to be better. I did in fact change my opinion about the game of what I thought last year and what I think right now is very different. In my opinion, Crimson Desert is a good game, but is held down by a ton of bad decisions. A ton.